Today, I've got some good news. And the good news is we're finally at the end of our discussions regarding social media managers. Now, the last thing that I want to address is something I saw on Instagram. There's a social media manager who put out a post recently, and her advice to the rest of us was that instead of looking towards social media managers to come in and boost our profits, that there are a couple of things that we need to a couple of things that we need to do, which would end up growing our sales. So, in her own opinion, well, I'm assuming that the social media manager in question is a woman. So, in her own opinion, what you need to do to actually increase your sales, whether you hire a social media manager or not, but especially if you hire a social media manager, she insists that what you need to do is to work on your product or your service. So, if your product or your service is top notch, then you hire a social media manager and then your sales will grow. The second thing that she suggested was you work on your branding. And if your branding is top notch, then if you hire a social media manager, your sales will increase. And let's see what else. Then the final thing that she recommended, if I remember correctly, was that you need to work on your content. And if your content is top notch, then you hire a social media manager and your sales will increase. Now, is there a problem with that thesis? No. In a sense, she actually is quite right. If your product or your service is top notch, and you have a social media manager running promotions, your sales should increase. If your branding is top notch or your content is top notch, then yes, these things do have a direct, maybe not direct, they do have a correlation with sales. So, yes, she is correct. But if you've been a long time listener of the podcast, you'll know that my own central thesis is that it's not all these other stuff that we do that are product or brand related that necessarily give us business growth per se, but actually it is the selling function that leads to business growth, because it's not often the person with the best product or service or with the best branding or with the best content that ends up winning the day. So if you're an old listener, you remember the story that I told you guys about VHS and Betamax. I grew up in a media household. My parents were journalists. My mom would eventually move on to be involved in public relations. And so early in the 80s, we were exposed to the Betamax and VHS technology. Now, hanging out with journalists and professionals in the field, everybody knew, well, at least those people who had some technical understanding, everyone knew that Betamax was the technically superior product. But at the end of the day, it was VHS that won out at the end of the day. And so for those of you who grew up in the late 70s or in the early 80s, you remember watching your favorite movies, Predator, Alien, Commando, She-Devil, what else? Transformers. I mean, even reruns of taped runs of Sesame Street, we all ended up watching them on VHS, even though, technically speaking, Betamax had the superior product. And it has been the same with the format wars over, I think there was Blu-ray and that's the DVD formats. You know, it was the technically superior one that lost out at the end of the day. And there are loads of examples that keep going on and on and on. Like, for instance, let's take the automobile industry. I think the safest cars to drive actually are Volvos. But Volvos are the unsexiest cars to drive, you know. So they have the best product out there, but they're not the ones that carry the day. So we can't really say that by having the better product or a better service, that is what is going to lead to an increase in sales. Now, for those of us in the wedding and the event community, it's a complaint that I hear about all the time. You hear wedding photographers keep on griping that why is this guy, why is he blowing up? Why is he raining? He's not that good a photographer. His editing is off. His composition is off. His this is off. His that is off. And I hear wedding planners say the same thing too. Why is this guy big? Why is this girl big? There's nothing there. It's the same centerpiece. It's the same design. It's the same folds. It's the same spreads. It's the same everything. So I'm hoping that this is something those of us in this space can relate to. Having a better product or a service is no guarantee to growing your sales. So The thing is, having a better product or service assumes that there is awareness about you out there in the market. So if you're going to have a better product play, you have to make sure that you're big on the whole awareness thing. People need to know who you are. And then the product or service play assumes that people trust you, and so you can't have that play without trying to build up your trust. And then having a better product or a service does absolutely nothing for the risks associated with the purchase. And that is one thing that a lot of us in the business space or the entrepreneurial space don't talk about. There are certain risks that are associated with getting our product or our service, and is one of the things that hinders the person from buying. So if someone comes to me as a photographer or as a sales consultant, the risk associated is that if I book Tarishima at 75,000 to come in to run an assessment and to speak with my sales team, then, and it doesn't work, that is 75k that I could have used towards something else. That is the risk. If I get Okonkwo and Son's wedding photographer at 2.5M to come in and cover my son's wedding, but he does a pathetic job, then that is 2.5M that could have gone into something else. So there's a risk associated with the purchase, and making sure that you have the better mousetrap in town, that you have the better product or service, does nothing to alleviate that risk. Branding, yes. Do everything you can to improve your branding. It helps with trust and it does help with awareness, but it does nothing for the sales risk that I have spoken about. Well, it does very little for the sales risk. Your content, it's the same with the branding. The content is going to help with trust and awareness, but doesn't help you to address the sales risk. Now, let's check out what my own thesis is about how best to effectively grow sales. Now, remember, when I talk about these sorts of things, for the sake of argument, I'm stripping them off and making it one versus another. But in reality, we actually need a conjunction of all these things. So it's not just a matter of sales conversations only, but you actually need to have a totally tip-top product or service. The branding has to be on point, and you need wonderful content out there, especially in this day of social media dominance. But then you also need to have skills with sales conversations, because sales conversations ticks all the boxes. It helps with the know, like, and trust. If you're able to carry on beautiful conversations in person, over the phone, over email, over DMs, over Twitter, whatever medium it is that the person reaches out to you, over Zoom, you're going to be able to achieve know, like, and trust. And then the thing about being adept at handling sales conversations is it allows you to address the risk associated with the purchase head on. And that's because when you're speaking to someone face to face, conversation or typing over the keyboard or whatever, you can get into the needs assessment to find out what it is that they actually need, what's important about your product or service, that they need, and you're going to be able to hit on those points. So if somebody is worried about hiring Okechukwu and Sons to cover the wedding at 2.5M, you're going to be able to have that conversation about what the ideal wedding photography coverage means to you, what it is that you're looking out for, and you'll get a better sense of what it is that you need to hit or what it is that you need to avoid in order to make sure that your wedding planning for the day or your photography coverage for the day is on point. And you're going to be able to do that when you are engaged in a conversation with someone. That's the reason why some brides or grooms, not just brides and grooms, but anybody in a commercial context, is not sure in the beginning, but heads in, speaks to 3 or 4 different people, but says, you know what, that girl, Kemi, I think she's professional. I think she can handle it, And it is from just the interactions that you've had with Kemi, Kelechi, and Okechukwu, and you just come out with that feeling, there's something in the pit of your stomach that just tells you that Kemi is the girl. she knows her stuff. So she's going to be our photographer or she's going to be our wedding planner. And that is what you can achieve when you are skilled at handling sales conversations. Let's say you don't like calling them sales conversations, but if you're skilled at handling any kinds of conversations in a commercial context, whether it's a face-to-face conversation or you're doing it over a keyboard, those are the things that you can achieve. Now, most importantly, why I think the sales conversation is the most important skill is because that is what allows you to ask for the commitment. If you have a solid product or service, you put it out in the market, you're not really asking for a commitment. Someone buys, someone doesn't buy, it's up to them. The same thing with content, except if you're very good at copywriting and then you're putting calls to action at the end of it, you're not really asking for the commitment. Same thing with your branding. The branding does not ask for anything because branding is just out there. It's meant to make you look likable, trustworthy, and well known. So you see all those advertisements for Coca-Cola, for instance, they're pure branding plays. So Coca-Cola, is it Coca-Cola to heal the world, Coca-Cola for love, Coca-Cola for Christmas, Coca-Cola for LGBTQ, whatever. But they're not really saying go out and buy a Coca-Cola. And it's the same thing with Mercedes-Benz advertising. It's largely a branding ploy. So they're just throwing around symbols of the Benz and other associations. The hope is that over time, if you see enough of this, if Tavishima sees enough of this, when Tavishima has, some 50, 60 million to spare, he'll go out and buy a Benz. But the advertisement itself, the branding copy, does not say go and buy a Benz right now. So, in the sales conversation, you're able to ask for the commitment. You're going to be able to say, okay, with everything that we've looked at so far, is there anything else you need to know about me and my wedding planning services? And then the person will say no, and then you'll be able to say that, okay, if we're in agreement, then to move forward, we'll need a deposit for the amount of so on. So, you're going to be able to ask for that specific commitment, and that's one advantage that being skilled at business conversation has. You're able to ask for the commitment, and it's only when you ask for the commitment or that next step that you're going to get closer to closing the sale. So, in a certain sense, our social media manager friend is absolutely correct. Make sure that your wedding planning services are top notch. Make sure that your branding is on point. And make sure that you have stellar content out there on Instagram, on Google, on Snapchat, on whatever it is that you use. But then I am also adding to the mix to say that you also have to be on top of your game when it comes to having sales conversations, when it comes to personal selling. You have to be very good at getting someone from the point of hey, hello, good morning, how can I help you? To thank you very much. I'm looking forward to wowing you guys on your wedding on the 25th of December, after they've paid the deposit, of course. So you have to be able to handle the gamut of conversations and interactions that go all the way in between, because you might start off with a phone call and switch to WhatsApp and then a couple of DMs and then one or two emails before they make the deposit. You have to be skilled to handle the gamut of all the conversations, everything that spans all through from one end to the other. And if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, I'm sure you'd have figured out that that is actually one of the central tenets that I have over here on the podcast, that yes, all these other things are important, your branding or packaging, as we Niger people like to call it. So yes, make sure you have the right look, the right hair, the right Instagram, the right graphics, the right everything. Make sure that you're using the latest and the best camera, or the best Egyptian lace from, the best Egyptian lace from Italy, or whatever it is that you decor people use to decorate the hall. Make sure that you're using the absolute best. And then hire your social media manager or your graphics person, and make sure that you're putting out content that is to die for, absolutely inspirational content to get our clients to reach out to us. But the thing is, when they do pick up that phone and call to say, is this Kemi LLC wedding planners, or is this Okechukwu and Sons wedding photography, or is this Kolade decor, and they say, I'm getting married December 25th, are you available, how much? You better make sure that you're skilled. in carrying on that conversation, because if you don't, you're just going to end up throwing away opportunity after opportunity after opportunity because you're not good at having these conversations, even after you spent all your money making sure that you have the latest and the greatest baking equipment, centerpieces, camera, whatever it is that you need, and you've paid all that money for branding, graphics, and everything. So let's not waste our money. Let's make sure that we're good at the conversation bit so that we actually convert, we actually close a lot more people that we are talking to. So that's it today, and that wraps up the social media manager conversation for now. Until a time comes when I see another social media manager putting up something on Instagram and I think, okay, maybe I need to lend my own voice to this conversation as well. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional, Tavishima Ayede. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.